Bom dia, Rio de Janeiro. Welcome to this second edition of the Web Summit Rio. It is my first time in Brazil, not yours, Bedy, but I'm super thrilled, excited to be in this very dynamic and vibrant place where people make it happen, just like Bedy Yang here as well. You're partially from Brazil, right?
I am fully Brazilian.
Fully
Although
Brazilian.
I don't look very Brazilian, mas sou brasileira.
Right. Let's now dive straight into the topic because we only have 20 minutes. We could talk about much, much more. But what does building an ecosystem really mean to you, and how do you go about it?
Yeah. So the topic we are covering today, I'm extremely passionate about, is building ecosystem. And I think what does it mean, and what it means also for me is there is such a vibrant ecosystem like the tech one in Silicon Valley. People think about innovation, they think about Silicon Valley. And growing up in Brazil, I didn't have the same access to the network, people, capital. And I became so passionate to say everything that we can have in Silicon Valley, we should be able to have that in different parts of the world. So having the ecosystem just means that there's a group of like-minded people, normally crazy people, whether you're a founder or you're investors, doing something that's more innovative that no one tried before. And when you are doing it alone or when it's crazy, you are going against the wave. So being able to be with people like you, I think that's so, so, so powerful. And that's why the topic of building ecosystem, networks, and communities is so close to my heart. And at the same time, I think it's so important to advance entrepreneurship in different parts of the world, especially because there's so much capital being built into venture, into the early stage scale-up companies. And I think it shouldn't be a privilege to a small group. I think everyone should have the same privilege to participate.
And ecosystems are all about inclusion, but not really competition, or at least positive competition. We are both a bit crazy. That's why we connected. So you need to be also a little bit crazy, a little bit disruptive at the same time. Tell us a little bit, because I think people here connect with that topic. That's why they are here. What does building a successful ecosystem really entail? What are some of the success recipes and key factors that play into it?
Yeah, and I think building ecosystem successful one has three main factors. And I'll list them, there's no particular order, but I think it's very important. One is the people that have the seat at the table in the ecosystem needs to be diverse. If everyone has the same idea or the same way of thinking, the same age, the same gender, the same race, the same social condition, from the same place, there's very little innovation and like new environment that can happen. So the number one thing I think is having a seat at the table, thinking about inclusion from day one. The second thing about building a successful ecosystem is thinking about the sustainability of that effort. So I know, for instance, before I joined the venture world at 500 Global, I started a network in Brazil called Brazil Innovators. And what was successful in my view in that network wasn't that there were like 5,000, 10,000 people. I think that's meaningful. The quality of people, it's meaningful. But what was meaningful, it was a network of people that wanted to see the environment succeed. Because there are moments that when people are building and putting a lot of effort in, they might need a pause. They might go somewhere. So I had 2 kids. Like I had a pause on like being able to contribute outside of my work. But then there were so many other people that believe in that and continue. So I think the second thing when we're designing or thinking about the ecosystem component is what are the sustainability component that needs to be built in from the design component. And then the third one, I think for all of us that are very passionate about the ecosystem piece is thinking from what's the value add that you can go there, right? Like I think the main topic that for Easton very often I think about is like, yeah, I think people come for the content. People come for the education. A lot of people, but content you can see in a lot of places, but the community component, right? Like, I think the third part is like, the community is only relevant if there's collaboration,
Yes.
like you mentioned. If people come in to say, I'm here to like give my best to this. And if you don't have that like giving before the taking, I think it becomes very thin, the sustainability and the success of the ecosystem. So I think just a quick recap, I think the first one is the diversity. The second one is design for the sustainability. And the third one is always come in with the intention for value add.
It's really almost like a family, a sense of belonging, right? And what you mentioned, I believe, is very important, is the quality of the network. I very much believe that you are who you know. So it's very important, not like how many social media followers you have, but who is actually following you, right? Now, the topic of our chat is building ecosystems through education. How do you build an ecosystem through education, Bedy?
Yeah, I think the education piece is really interesting. For instance, a little bit of context is with 500, I help lead our education effort for founders and then investors. So we are very well known for the acceleration program. Acceleration program, we almost call it like, instead of going to Harvard or going to like Stanford, you go to an accelerator program. And we proud for helping companies move from 0 to 1, right? Like, I think the most important piece, like, is being able to provide the content, but in addition to the content is the community. Because I think when you think about education, there's two pieces, right? There's the education and then there's the learning. You can learn today with the availability of technology and information, you can learn anything free. You can learn anything without giving your equity. Yeah. You can learn anything without paying an institution. Yet, I think when I think about the education, it's like, for instance, when someone joined the 500 accelerator program, is someone believing that you can do it. And I think that's really difficult because when you're early stage, you have very often like a pre-product, pre-traction, pre-other investors. There's no validation. So I think when you come in, we say, okay, I'll give you the validation with the capital, but I think the network, the mentorship, the education is going to be this combo that's going to generate a lot of value. So on one end, when we think about education, it's educating the founders. But, when you go to like very new nascent ecosystem, any of them, right? Doesn't matter if it's anywhere here in Brazil or Latin America or Mexico or Colombia or Ecuador, or like now I'm super involved with like Middle East. We're going to expand next to like Africa, for instance. The most common thing you hear from investor is like, there's no deal flow, therefore I don't invest.
Oh.
But the reality is there's talent. The talent is there, but the investor's mindset is not.
Needs to change.
So
education.
Exactly. You need to use education to also change the mindset of investors. So we also spend a lot of time looking at, we've done, for context, almost 3,000 investments. There has to be some sort of what works, what doesn't work. So what we do is we put together an education program. And it's not meant to say, we know it, and here it is, the playbook. This is everything that we learn, and how do we construct the early stage investing in different parts of the world. Because investing early stage in Silicon Valley is different from investing in Brazil. That is very different on investing in Saudi or in Indonesia, right? So being able to use education as an excuse, but the community as real strength and component, plus the capital, I feel like that's a little bit of a winning formula for ecosystem.
It's a fantastic strategy, and I love also the mentorship part, which is so crucial. Now, to give our audience some numbers, 500 Global has already backed 5,000 founders from 2,900 companies in 80 countries. You have invested in 35 plus companies valued at more than $1 billion and 160 plus companies valued at over 100 million US dollars. So it's quite a big size VC firm. Now, how do you not just build ecosystems, but really maintain them, cultivate them, nurture them so that you have the sustainability component as well?
Yeah. And then talking a little bit about our investments. So of the 35 companies that are unicorn valued over $1 billion, the first fund that we have, the top performer of the fund, the founders are from Portugal. The fund two, and it's a man-woman co-founder. The fund two top performer company, it's a company, a woman CEO, it's a Canva. So the founder is from Australia. So thinking from an ecosystem and where we go a little bit next, excuse me, because I don't want to cough on the microphone.
It's super interesting what you're saying. Also the diversity of companies and industries. And I mean, Canva was an amazing opportunity in seeing the growth of the company over the last couple of years. And I'm a big fan and user of Canva as well.
No, it's amazing. Because when we are doing like early stage investing, it's hard to think that there's a founder from Australia or like a founder from Portugal. Today it's easy because you've seen cases like that, right? But I think 10 years ago, 13 years ago, that was completely unheard of.
Yes.
So I think the main component of thinking how we start is really like by deploying the capital and then building the network to support them. I think, answering your question, now today we have 5,000 companies, and thinking on the scalability, I think a very honest thing that when you're raising money as founder or you're an investor, you need to be very intentional. What can you do for the founders, right? Like, so to give you an example, we do not take board seats because it's impossible to be at the board of 2,900, 3,000 companies. We're not going to generate the value, but people come to us because they believe that we can have the network that can have them succeed. So we use a network effect, which is, okay, 500 has a brand, has a network effect. How can I help you do market access? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. If you ever want to enter like Saudi Arabia, like today we have a full team that helps you do that. If you ever want to enter Egypt, if you ever want to enter Silicon Valley, if you ever want to enter like any market, you have a network. We have a unicorn in all those places.
So you can really rely on your network and really also feel reassured and safe that there is a support system around there for you. So that is very important, especially when you venture into new territories and markets and countries where you might not have staff or experience yet.
Yeah, I think on the relying is an interesting point, right? Like on ecosystem, you can't force people to do something, right? Like it's like you put people together and then you set the culture, you set the intentionality, but you can't make people do one thing or the other. But I think a proof of the connectivity of people is I did like 2 years ago, I went to Nigeria, and then a founder that came to our program, he said, I'm getting married, and then I'm inviting 3 of my matchmates to come to my wedding, and like one of them are from US, one of them are from Asia. So I think all of a sudden, like it's not only like we hope they contribute, but it goes beyond the commercial component. And I think what's really important on thinking on the networks and continuity of it is the trust that's built. Like we joke, like sometimes as partners, can we almost help deliver the baby of someone if needed, if that's what they need? Because being founder is so lonely. But me as an individual, there's only so much I can help you. But what if this network has the same mindset? What if this network is not only in Brazil? What if this network is in 80 countries?
And for that, you mentioned culture is very important and also organic growth, right? But still, you must have some incentives to attract more members to the community, especially in the technology and innovation sector. What kind of programs or packages do you offer to new members coming in?
Yeah. And I think it's an interesting thing. I think because you're also like influencer in social media, like what will attract people to come to your network, right? I think the number one thing when you're building ecosystem, like in our case, I can be a little bit specific. It's just on the third point of success is the intentionality of the value add. Like I think it's being very intentional when you are building something. What are you giving into that, right? It could be your point of view. It can be someone can travel and they see you in Brazil and they get excited about Brazil. There is some value that you're giving to the person. I think in our case, I think a lot of people come to us because we're a consistent first believer. And you might say, okay, well, we write checks very fast. Like, what does that mean? But in a place where no one, like you say, you hear no from hundreds of investors, we're the first one that give it the capital to you and believe in you, and then you become a unicorn. I have companies, and then that's how I also rise to the senior partnership at 500 is by investing in founders in Brazil. And when I have founders come to me, like I was at the time that I was going to shut down my company. And then you came and then say, no, you can do this. And then from that on, they raised over 100 million, right? And then I think that type of story is what really kept me going, because it's very easy when everything is successful, but it's very hard to build when no one else is believing. And I think people don't forget that.
Yes, exactly. When you help them once, they will never forget and always come back to you and be grateful, at least 99% of the people. Now, tell us how you help some of the founders and investors to really educate them about the sector and also help them create their own global network.
Yeah, I think there's something really interesting about brand and influencer and a network. For whatever reason, like I think when we put our energy out there, we attract people like us. So for instance, I don't know why you're moderating a session about ecosystem, and I decided to talk about ecosystem.
For sure.
I think at the end of the day, we attract the like-minded people. And I think a lot of it, like I know we talk a lot about, like, I'm in venture, right? So I'm talking something slightly different, which is like energy moving. And I think at the end of the day is the energy that we move, the things that we believe attract people like us.
Yes.
And I think that makes it so sustainable, because I think that's the most fulfilling part. At 500, we give capital, and that gives them a long way because it gives them breathing room. It gives founders breathing room to execute, right? And then we help a little bit more with education to say, all right, you can get there faster because we've seen other people fail. This is how you succeed. And we often hear, and then one thing we didn't talk so much about mentorship, having someone that's unicorn might or might not help you. They help you on your imagination, and that's good. But normally someone who just did something just a little bit before you is the most powerful mentorship they can give you. So you have seed round, someone just raised an A round, they can help you the most. Someone that just raised A round, how they build a global business, that's where they can help the most. So I think a lot of it is also the energy and then building a network and mentors around us. And I've been so lucky to have been surrounded by people who want to build like a greater good.
500 Global has about 2.4 billion US dollars in assets under management. Not too bad. 200 members or so, staff located in 30 plus countries. Now, can you also share some tips about managing such a diverse, in-house team and network? How do you do that?
Yeah, we cannot be called 500 Global if you don't have a distributed team. So I think it's in the design. In the design that we are intentional. There's one thing that we have clarity on, which is our mission. Our mission is to fund entrepreneurs and help build the ecosystem. If people come and join knowing that's a similar vision, and they can go and have space for execution, and they can do their interpretation in different parts of the world, that builds the best talent. So I think we're very fortunate to attract the right people. And I think we design the global and the remote from scratch. So just to close, the thinking is we have partners like senior managing members in Palo Alto, in Miami, in like Riyadh, in Malaysia. They can be anywhere in the world. So I think when you design like that, you start like that, we can do anything on building a global organization.
Final question, Bedy. What keeps you motivated? What keeps you going with so much energy?
I think the ecosystem, I think I like to invest in great founders. I think that's a really good way for me to realize, like, I can see the potential when there's nothing to like literally billions. I think that's very satisfying. But when they achieve that, what makes me even happier is a group that goes and can do that at the same time. So it's this network that keeps going.
With that, we finish this session with Bedy Yang, managing partner at 500 Global. Give it up for Bedy. Thank you so much. Obrigada.